What is the most important asset in your business? Even Apple won't tell you it's my technology. They will tell you it's my people.
What are the things that you really look into my CV?
This is like asking the recipe of the secret recipe. There's a way to be more successful than maybe other applicants. It's to have
Elona and Desma are the founders of the award-winning consulting firm S&K HR Consulting. They have helped 40-plus industries set up their business in UAE.
there is a very different HR experience out there. And so I thought I need to do something about this.
Companies like Microsoft, they can't operate without an HR director.
If you are serious about creating a high-performing team, there's an that needs to happen.
The affordability of getting things wrong, the cost is much greater, and the consequences of it is you could have to shut down. This is where our expertise come in.
So hello and welcome to another series of podcast organized by Plan My Firm. Here we'll try to understand how do one recruits the right candidate for the right job, how to create a healthy environment in the workplace, and thirdly, let us understand of how to build an impactful team that actually not only delivers in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, but shall also stick on for a longer period. So, of course, to decode all these nuances around the HR systems and the HR workplace and how human resources is basically taken up and made it as a capital of the company. Let's welcome Elona and Desma, both the CEO and managing partners of S&K Recruitment firm.
Thank you so much for
yeah.
having us.
Thank you
I
so
wanted
much.
to understand,
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to understand why S&K, because there's Elrona and there's Desma. Why S&K?
It's a great question and a good starting point
Yeah, and it was. I was
to
very
break the
inquisitive
ice.
about it.
Yeah, to break the ice.
So it starts with, we have two versions of S&K. So we call it the S&K 1.0 and the S&K 2.0. And the S&K 1.0 is more related to my origin story. So when I left the corporate world and I wanted to start something to focus HR and to improve HR in the SME space, I wanted to work as an independent consultant. And those days in 2013, you had to have an entity. So with an entity, obviously, they said, come up with a name because the entity needs to have a name. And for the life of me, I cannot come up with a name, to be honest. And then at one dinner, Desma's like, most HR firms have, company names are based on people. So why don't you do that? And the other part is I am Elrona and I am Silba too. So outside of work, people know me as Silba. Like Desma calls me Silba. But at work, for some reason, my first name picked up and I'm known as Elrona. So S and K. So S is for Silba.
Okay.
And K is actually my husband's name.
Okay.
So because that time we thought that this might be something that we would do. So Silba and Karsten. Then we designed the logo, got the colors, had a brand. So when S&K 2.0 came, which is with me and Desma, we're like, why invest in that? Let's invest in something else. And so we retained that.
Yeah, we actually get asked this question a lot, and incidentally we have a niece and a nephew whose names start with S and K, and they keep thinking that the business is about them. So every time they come visit us, they're like, "Oh, Seth and Kira, this is ours."
I was inquisitive about it too. Like I said, why S&K? And
Yeah.
I said, okay, I could actually. So my second name, I said, okay, Sylvia, and then I said, okay.
Yeah.
And I said, this is Desma. Then I said, I don't know. Maybe they had started it in that way, or maybe it's a trademark.
Yeah.
Or something relating to
So
it.
she started it back in 2013, and then I joined in 2020. From 2013 to 2020, I was very hell-bent on I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. In fact, my dad was an entrepreneur actually in Abu Dhabi for 40 years, and he ran a very successful pest control business. And seeing how hard he worked, I swore that I would never be an entrepreneur or marry an entrepreneur. At the
Why
time,
not marry?
because it's so much hard work. My poor mother was an amazing wife, very supportive. And, like when other kids would go on summer vacations for like a month, 2 months, we never got to do that. And it would always be because, obviously my dad had to be present with his business. And, I would think that his business was the reason that we, weren't able to do the things that the other kids would do. And now I know exactly what he means, because when they call us to come on vacation, I'm like, no, but I have business,
Yeah.
and now he understands.
Of course, the work life is totally different when you're an entrepreneur. You're running the whole show, and
Yeah.
everyone is dependent on you, and especially when you're in the business.
Yeah.
If you're on the business, then it becomes a little more easy. But if you're in the business, then the business doesn't function without your presence at times, or even at least your time.
Yeah. I also, regardless of in the business, on the business, there's that. But there's also like your heart is with the business,
100%.
And especially like we're only 4 years into our business as it is today. And so, every opportunity, every time you're away from it's like your child, you keep getting drawn back to your child. So we keep getting drawn back to our business. And I think, that will probably be
And for
with
you all,
us.
it's more difficult because you all will have common functions together. You all are sisters. So it means most of the time you both will not be. So
Yeah.
if there's any event in the house or there's any function in the house,
Yeah.
I mean, both the partners won't be.
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
becomes so difficult. Like at least, if I have another partner, I know that fine. I'll
Yeah.
finish my family functions.
Yeah.
And at least he's taking over the board.
Yeah.
True.
Huh?
Actually, there's
how you manage in that time?
There's advantages and
This
disadvantages
is what I
to
was
both
gonna
of us
say.
being in right. So like we've divided the leadership of the company between the two of us, and so we have that sorted. But when we do have family functions, we also have a great team that we work with and that we trust, right? So we are able to step away for a few days, if you plan around the weekends, one day on either side. And then, like one of the reasons that we wanted to be in business also is because we wanted to also have a good work life. I don't want to say balance, call it work life integration, right? So that means we keep time for our family when it's needed without having to feel guilty.
So when you started S&K, what was that real inspiration that took you? Okay, fine. Let me start this recruitment firm. Is it only purely because of your experience? Because you were, a professional recruiter in a firm? Or is it because of that? You extended your experience?
Yeah.
So,
Or
thank you
was
for
it for a
that.
particular problem to solve, that you were finding
Yeah.
that, this is the bigger problem in the market and I need to solve this?
So thank you for that question, because it's one of my favorite questions to like paint the right scenario in terms of why when I went on this journey in the beginning. So I lived in a corporate environment for 10 years. My HR experience, HR and recruitment, all of it was in a beautiful corporate environment that was very progressive HR, valued people, had core values. We had a seat at the table as HR, and we were true partners. And I thought that bubble that I lived in was a bubble that everybody lived in when it came to HR. And so I continued to prosper in that environment because it was a very supportive environment. But as you you go into your middle management.
And it's very time bound.
Yeah, but no, as you go into your middle management sort of thing, you start networking because you want to see what's out there and you want to do some knowledge sharing and transfer of information and ideas. And so that's when networking started. And that's when I started getting introduced to the wider, entrepreneurs and landscape of HR, from SMEs and small businesses, local businesses. And I realized that there is a very different HR experience out there. And that is a cause of maybe lack of access to good HR, lack of access to people, to resources, to information. And so I thought I need to do something about this. So that was my drive, is to build better HR environment, people environment in the SME community. So, that can be done by just wishing it. You have to kind of go deep in and, take that step.
No, even
So-
I felt it. I'll be honest to you, adding to your point, even I had felt that beyond 10 years of employment, I felt I was de-learning now.
Right.
So I had reached to a point of saturation ki I can't grow from here.
Yeah.
Grow
Yeah.
means unless I change my domain of work. So
Yeah.
if I was working maybe in finance or legal, then I had to move to marketing so that at least I have the drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that drive gets over in the same department.
Yeah.
Unless you go as an entrepreneur and say that let me solve the bigger problem
Yeah.
of getting the right guy to fit into right environment and building a culture that will, be in line with the goals of the company. Because 10 years back, you
Yeah.
see HR department was more administrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, people used to not even consider them as part of the board members.
Yeah.
And
So-
today, it
yeah.
has, I mean, thanks to God, I mean, it's evolved.
Yeah.
Or thanks to technology, you could say, it's evolved that we see companies like Apple or companies like Microsoft, they can't operate
Yeah.
without an HR director.
Yeah.
Or they have separate C-level executives only to manage resources and to move resources from a resource
Yeah.
to a capital resource. And that's how I seen when I was doing my audit also, I had seen in some of the companies where they had put resource capital, or they had put, actually the word it was, I was not able to get
Maybe
the word.
development.
No, it was resource capital they had used. They said, like, since everyone spends on fixed assets or on other assets of business,
Oh, they had a separate line item.
we also spend on human.
Yeah.
So human itself is also a capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have three things to say to that, right? So firstly, I think S&K HR Consulting, and I'm speaking a little bit for Elona here, was born out of a need to solve a problem that she identified,
Yeah.
which is the absence of good HR practices and good employment experiences in the SME
I think the word
community.
experience matters.
Yeah.
The drive.
I think both of us in our corporate life, we were very fortunate because we worked with really good companies and we continued to grow.
Yeah.
But then both of us felt like, look, to make an impact in the larger community, we have to do something a little different. And that's when she embarked on that journey. She was a bit of a visionary. I followed suit a little later. But so that's one thing that started. That's how the origin story happened, right? With regards to humans and the capital that you're talking about, that angle. So I always say this, that if you ask any entrepreneur, CEO, anyone, what is the most important asset in your business? Even Apple won't tell you it's my technology.
Yeah.
They will tell you it's my people.
100%.
So it only is a matter of time until the world kind of not just evolves, but just
Start accepting it.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a gap, and that gap just needs to narrow to say, hang on, people are our capital, most important valued asset. Let's invest in it, right?
Yeah. There will be a time when they will start putting them on balance sheets.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I know we spoke about Apple, but our clients are small businesses, and they are businesses that have a lot of times less than 50, 40 people. They're the ones that we're seeing that are really passionate about creating these great workplaces and creating great experiences for that people. So we don't have to wait for an Apple. You can do that in the smaller business community.
And there are so many times, look at, in some of the functions of work, could it be even sales manager? A sales manager is such a powerful capital asset or
For
human
sure,
asset,
yeah.
capital.
Yeah.
I mean, if he just moves from the organization, there's tremendous amount of adverse sales that will start hitting. The sales will start dropping.
This is
And people do not recognize it.
Yeah.
They actually should know. And that's where I say that humans are also capital. It's just that we have not recognized them on balance sheets,
Yeah.
but they are capital.
Yeah.
Especially the strategic positions. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see the doer level. It's fine. You could replace them because they're doing it. But supervisor and C-level guys are literally capital to the company.
Yeah.
see
Because the value actually, the company gets devalued if those employees move. Look at Tim Cook. If Tim Cook moves today from Apple, the company has 100% it will have an effect on the share market.
Yeah, it will. It might. Share market is very unpredictable. But take a look at Microsoft, right? When Mr. Satya
Gates.
Nadella took over, there was skepticism about the succession of this person. But Satya Nadella has actually taken Microsoft to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And it could be that the environment also supported it, or it was his vision and his leadership. So there was a time, an era of Bill Gates, but there's now an era of Satya Nadella, and he's synonymous with Microsoft.
100%.
But what you have to understand in Dubai specifically, right? 90% of businesses are not an Apple or a Microsoft. 90% of businesses are SMEs, which are 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, 300 people, even 500 people. Still small size compared to the giants that you have. And they deserve just as good people management tools, techniques, and access as an Apple or a Microsoft, because the impression or the image is they have the means, we don't, which is not true. They have, if you have the passion, you are willing, we will find ways to help you, because that's where we come in to simplify HR.
Yeah, I was coming to that point. I mean,
Yeah.
I wanted to understand, like, see, you have two verticals to the business.
Yeah.
One is the recruitment where basically you try to source the right candidate for the right job and make sure that he's employable. The second part is that basically you create that ecosystem around the human resource management. I mean, as far as healthy workplace, I mean, guiding over the HR manuals.
Yeah.
I mean, training the HR department on the laws that are in this, the labor laws in this market. And with all, then trying to standardize the compensation, or could be other nuances around the workplace.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand, let's go to the primary one, that's recruitment. So when you start with recruitment, is it important that when you're sourcing a candidate to put the right, the detailed description
Yeah.
while sourcing the candidate, so that the candidate knows that what's the outcome expected?
Yeah. Look, I think recruitment, most people think that that is the beginning of
At least for me, I thought that was the beginning.
okay, so let's maybe break that down a little, right? That is not the beginning.
Okay.
There's things that you need to do even before you decide that I'm going to recruit some person. So, again, the analogy that I use is, imagine if you are going to on a holiday, right? And you are booking in a hotel. People, if you use the same analogy, they'll say, okay, getting a guest is most important. But if you think about it, there's a lot of preparatory work that needs to happen before you have your first guest, right?
100%.
It's exactly the same thing. There's a lot of preparation work that you need to do as a business before you have your employee. Yes, putting down the roles and responsibilities, creating what we call, the technical term is a job description, is important. But even before that, if you are serious about creating a high-performing team, there's an HR setup that needs to happen before you even make that first hire.
Wow.
And
And what is that?
And that is building your HR foundation.
Okay.
Okay, what is this person going to do? How much are you going to pay him or her? What kind of environment or culture are you trying to create?
Fit him into.
Yeah, exactly. So there's building that foundation is key before you even make your first hire. You can do it in parallel, probably, in a small business world. Sometimes it's not practical to do everything before you make your first hire. You can do it in parallel, but there's a step that before that, that I'm sure, Elona is the one who actually supports the delivery of all of our services to our clients. I'm sure she'll elaborate on that even further.
Yeah, thank you. So HR Foundation is trying to understand or trying to visualize what your organization will look like. And before you even think of the person, you think about the role and how will I support that role to deliver what I want for my business. So you have to create that full circle experience before you go out and
So
hire.
it's that architecture that you create.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like you create a blueprint, you create a foundation that is strong enough to welcome new people and let them be nurtured and grow, and you're able to retain.
So like in a development, where is the living room, and where is, so you have a complete architecture of where he's coming and boarding himself.
Yeah, so
Or where we are boarding him
think
actually.
of day one, right? Even if when you've selected your employee, they come and then what? What
If
happens
you're not
then?
clear about-
If you're not clear, like where are they going to sit? Do they have the right tools? Are you managing that first? Are you giving them? Do they understand enough about your company? Do they understand enough your clients?
And to say, do you understand enough about your company to able to share what your vision is? Because in the beginning years, as a SME or as when you're starting to hire, they come not for the company brand, because that's not necessarily what is known in the market. They're not coming for the salary net. They're coming because they believe the owner. They believe in that vision. They buy into that. I will grow with this guy. I have opportunity. This company has potential. But if you're not going to articulate that and share it in a way that is believable and something that somebody can buy into consistently from like the offer time to day one and see that in reality, it's not going to keep that person happy for very long. And then you'll see turnover being your first, HR challenge.
No, but always, Desma, I felt that I mean, even though if I was recruiting, I felt at the same time, the candidate who's come for an interview is interviewing me.
Absolutely.
And this is the new change which I have felt in, I mean, a decade back, the recruitment was totally different. I mean, he used to come with a mindset, hope I get a job.
Yeah.
Today, he's saying that I need to see who's this guy.
Absolutely.
Whether he's going to sustain.
Yeah.
Correct.
And whether my personal goals are linked with his goals.
Exactly.
And see, yeah, yes, it is. And I think that's how it should be, right? Because there has to be a good fit for a good long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And, now just how they say employers look up your social media to see what you're posting, employees also look you up to see what you're posting. Like, is this company someone that I want to associate with? Someone that I'm going to be helping grow this company? Do our values align? So if you really are serious about looking for top talent, you have to put in the effort.
Yeah.
So once a person applies, now, okay, so there's this HR recruitment S&K who basically has put up the post on LinkedIn or anywhere, and I've applied for a job.
Yeah.
So once I applied, I want to know what are the things that you really look into my CVs, or how a CV has to be catchy. So that what are those things that you really look into that out of, because you find Dubai is a cosmo country. So in this city, you'll find every nationality.
Yeah.
You'll find people coming from different degrees. And with so much of demand for employment, I mean, everyone applies.
Yeah.
They keep changing their profiles too, so that they just want a job. Yeah. At that time, how do I basically distinguish my CV so it comes in your eyes that this is the CV that I'm really looking at, I should call him for an interview?
Yeah.
This is like asking the recipe of the secret recipe. But actually, it's not a secret recipe. It should be shared so that people have opportunities. But the point is, you have a job, right? And you have employers looking for talent, and you have talent looking for employment. But not always the two shall meet. It is, employers are searching for talent and they find a lack.
But Elona, I have not even met. I've just applied.
Yeah. So,
but even out of those 100 CVs, how do you filter this guy should call him?
So this is where I'm coming to, right? So this is the gap. And then they call us in to help them find the talent, and we look at the candidates. And like you rightly pointed out, the picture is, it's so diverse, it's so multinational, it's so varied in terms of experience, interest. And then this is where our expertise come in. And it's not rocket science, to be honest. It's about you valuing your experience, your knowledge, and how you position yourself in the recruiter's mindset. So there's a way to be more successful than maybe other applicants. It's to have the simple things, the ABCs of being a good job candidate, sorted out. What we often find is the opposite, where somebody has applied and they don't even recall applying. Or somebody who has applied but has missed vital information in their application or in their CV. So these things are very important that you should, definitely cover. So when we look at applicants, we look at, are they serious about this role when they apply? Like, they've not just randomly, applied. You mentioned LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has all these easy apply options and people apply all along. So we scan every CV that comes to our...
And what about the presentation part? I mean, how is the presentation? Like, I remember myself, I used to always start with experience. I should never give personal detail. I used to put personal detail last minute. I just want to give my experience of how I'm suiting this role.
Yeah.
So if someone was looking for maybe a legal head, I would see, okay, fine. I've spent almost 10 years in law, and I know these are the areas which are basically mastered, and these are the areas that I'm working to gain more skills. And I used to start in that manner.
Yeah.
I always thought that putting a photo on a CV was more effective.
Yeah.
Because I used to put with nice suit and all. So I just felt that it was to create some nice impression.
Yeah.
And get some Photoshop done.
So I think there's a couple of things here, right? So just in terms of the CV, if we take a few steps back, because these are the basics that a lot of people don't get right.
That's what I wanted to educate people that while building a CV, at least consider these things, because without considering these elements of the CV, it's going to be even difficult for you to get filtered, because I used to never filter someone who doesn't put a photo. I mean, someone who's CV, it looks so blank.
So
If you don't have a photo, like especially a mid-level manager
Yeah.
or a C-level, if he's not putting a photo, I said, who's this guy? And,
So-
and CV looks really blank, at least in this colorful world.
Yeah.
So I think to kind of address that, right? Like, so the beauty of being an HR professional is you are taught to be very unbiased. So CV with a picture or not,
Okay.
we don't, that's great to have. But if you're a fit in terms of your qualifications, experience, skills, that's more important.
Okay.
That being said, right? So number one is don't just apply for any job. Apply for a job that you actually meet the requirements. So when we post on LinkedIn or whatever, right? Just because you've applied doesn't mean you qualify. So do yourself a favor and apply for something that you qualify for. If it says there's a specific language requirement, for instance, and you don't speak that language, don't apply because you're not going to get shortlisted. That's number one. We also understand that Dubai is filled with people from diverse cultures. So everyone comes with a different experience of how they've crafted their CV.
But I still believe that some roles are specifically for maybe a particular culture or maybe a particular language at least. I believe it's especially in
Language
Dubai,
could
like-
be,
Yeah.
if let's say you're a
Language
business,
has always been a barrier in some of the roles.
it's a need for our Dubai is not a business that is only supporting the local market,
Yeah.
right? Dubai is a hub that supports regional places. So if you're a business set up in Dubai and you are catering to the Turkish market and you have, you need somebody that is able to speak to the Turkish clients. So
Yeah.
you would need somebody to learn, to have that language. So it's not about the
I was not talking a specific language, Elona. I was speaking about someone who has, if someone knows English and Arabic, it becomes much more easy to employ him, even when you have the similar skills. Is it, what do you say about it? Desma?
No, again, just to kind of build on what she's saying, right? Like there's no cookie cutter model. There's everything specific to a particular role. So sure, having English and Arabic is great. But if the role doesn't require
Yeah.
English and Arabic, then maybe someone who has English and Turkish is probably a better fit for this role.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
it is very specific to each role, and not just language. It applies across everything, your experience and your qualifications as well. I know there's a lot of debate these days about.
No, I think I'll support your statement because, of course, when you look at if I'm applying somewhere a job role in a legal field, then of course Arabic plays a very important role because the documents are in Arabic. When you go to the police station, you approach in Arabic, and the court operates on Arabic as the primary language. So it becomes very easy for you, and then that becomes the right fit. Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
you
in
just
specific departments.
you reminded me of so I have a friend who's an English speaker, but she was hired for her English speaking skills in a French school.
Okay.
And they were looking for so you would think like, oh, she doesn't speak French, right? But they were looking for a specific language skill in a school that spoke a completely different language. So everything is very bespoke. We don't work out of a set database where we just use a magical algorithm and we churn out candidates. We take every role, we understand not just the role, but the person fit to the organization. So when we work with business owners, we ask them what the culture of the organization is. Because, when we are representing a client to a candidate, we want to make sure that we also place the candidate in a good working environment.
Now, when you say culture, now culture for a startup could be very different from a government culture. Now, how do you differentiate this, or how do you tell it to because the owner doesn't know at times, what culture to maintain. He just wants a person to get his job done.
Yeah.
In that case, what would be your guidance to these owners who come to you and say that, Desma, I need your help to build a team to achieve this 20 million target.
Yeah.
And the team will be maybe in this composition of, there could be 10 sales
Yeah.
guys, there could be some marketing manager, there will be an HR. And in this composition, how do I know what is a good culture?
Yeah.
Is it just having great chairs or having just a happy mood? I really don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just
having
trying
a
to
pool table and
having
a
a pool
billiards
table or
table
what
is
is this?
culture.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's-
These are the myths,
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
okay, this is the culture in Apple, or which is already marketed.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to replicate that in your office or
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
build it. I don't know. I'm just asking you, what is
Yeah.
the right culture?
Again, the best part about, again, the beauty of being in HR is most answers are it depends.
Okay.
You know, so most people first of all think culture means having a foosball table. You know, like we have
Yeah.
a great culture. We have a
Yeah.
coffee machine,
Yeah.
foosball table, bean bags.
Nice,
This is
yeah.
great.
A
You know,
coffee shop.
that's not culture.
Okay.
That's like added perks maybe to make it fun or casual or whatever, but that is not culture. Culture is how you want your people to feel when they come into work. That is culture. How do you want your people to feel? So the question is, again, no cookie cutter to say this is a great culture or this is how your culture should be. It's a collaborative process where we talk to the business owner about understanding, you know, how to create an environment that brings the best out of people and makes them look forward to coming to work every day.
I think so. I think that the hook is that, I mean, how to drive them to the office every day, or at least open that laptop every day to see what's my role and how do I'm progressing towards that end objective of what's the outcome that is expected out of me.
See, true. Everything that you said is true. It's the employee, right? Every morning when that employee wakes up to come to work, they're coming to build your vision and bring your vision into reality.
Yeah, because they believe in you.
Yes, but how
They've selected
excited
you as the
are
boss.
they? How excited are they to do that for you? That is defined not by the role and the job, but the culture that they get welcomed into.
Yeah.
And each person adds to that culture, but the culture is to be not driven, like we say, it should be by design and not by default.
So do communication plays an important role here?
Very important role, and it has to be a communication that is thought through and not, there's many ways of communicating, right? And there's many approaches to communication. You could have a business owner who's working in the business, they all the time they're talking to every employee and may feel like they're communicating, but that is one channel of communication, which is in person, one to one, but it is very task oriented maybe, or very transaction oriented, and not necessarily talking about the vision. So you have to play that communication to help build that culture and reinforce that message constantly.
I'll give one example of mine. Like, how do I mean, I don't know whether it's right. Again, now you can correct me because
You bet I will.
You're the subject matter expert. I mean, for me, it's always I believed in aligning the personal goal of any employee with the company goals. Whether he sees there's a growth path here, whether and I've never believed in bossing. I've always believed in handholding.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we give him a task or we tell him that this is the outcome of these tasks, and we say, you figure it out. Tell me what help you need from me, tell me.
Yeah.
But you come with your ideas, learn from your ideas, keep trying your ideas, and if something if it's working, then good. But if it's not, then you come, let's see what we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is the way I create my culture. I mean, of course, I play the stick and carrot approach as well. So where I have to hit, and where I have to, be very comforting to them, I do that as well. But at the end of the day, they know that this guy is very clean from his heart. He's a very nice guy, and I never boss like what time you come, what time you go. That's not my style. Get the work done, bro.
Yeah.
Now, whether you're working on the hybrid system, whether you're working from home, try to be in touch with the team and get the work done for the day.
Yeah.
Because someone is waiting for that end result of yours, what you're supposed to deliver today.
Yeah.
And there's a chain, and the relay is going to is waiting
Yeah.
if you don't deliver.
Tag team.
I think that there's so many elements to uncover there, right? So you spoke about, I don't boss, I handhold. I think there is a situation where in my view, the best situation is where you create a structure, a framework for people that don't even need handholding.
Okay.
You allow them to thrive. You give them the wings, and then you allow them to thrive, right? Sometimes you have to be more directional. Sometimes there is time and space to be more kind of, you can play around a little bit, try a little different things. So there's no one size fits all, but the objective is always to find people that are willing to go the extra mile, and then you create the environment that allows them to go the extra mile. And then if something doesn't work, don't blame them for it, support them through it. Allow people to make mistakes as well, because that's how everyone will learn. And, none of us have all the right answers anyways, right? That's number one. Number two is you talked about aligning personal goals with the company goals. Yes, I think more than goals, I think it's aligning values, which is more important than goals, because the goal of a person might be different, but if he can identify with the values, like you said, if they see that you have a clean heart, you're coming from a good place, I will follow your vision and I will help you deliver your vision, right? Even maybe our goals don't quite align like for like, but I believe in you so much that I want to help you move forward.
So adding to that, it means managers and leaders should be inspirational.
100%. And, it's interesting that you brought that up because it just reminds me of this conversation I had with a client yesterday, a very successful business. And he said one very interesting thing. He said, you won't believe it, but we don't have senior HR in the business. And I smiled. And he said, because I believe management is the responsibility of every manager or leader in the organization. Management is not outsourced to HR. HR gives you the framework to be able to operationalize, but you can't outsource people management to HR. That is a line manager function.
Yeah. And what he said was, we have every people management is a manager's responsibility. Like management is not just manager is not just a delivery of the function. It is the people that deliver that function. Therefore, manage the people and the function will be delivered, So that is your vehicle, that is your capital, that is your resource that you have to use. And, to your point about you are trying to be authentic and people see authentic, come through. Even like nowadays we're blessed with so much of social media content, but they can see who's being authentic and who's being fake. And, there are people who will troll the fake, but will connect with the authentic person. So it's the same with the leader, especially in like organizations that we support, which are small businesses and SMEs. A lot of it is based on the leader, the leadership's personality, the way they inspire their team to come to work, to deliver, and to like leave work even happier, So that is definitely that.
I also want to say this, right? I know we say inspirational, but it's putting pressure on someone to say, no, you're a leader, you have to be inspirational. Which is like, sometimes it doesn't, like a genius is a genius, but they don't necessarily know how to inspire. And that's why they need help, right? And so when we work with them, this is what we help them to do. We help them to articulate their genius.
And balance their emotions as well.
Correct. And then communicate that to their people. Because sometimes, you have a great idea, you have a great vision, but you don't know what to do with it. How to communicate and how to like tell your team and bring them on the same page. And so inspirational is great. And if it's, not everybody is naturally inspirational. Some people need help.
It brings me to another story. Recently, we developed like a performance management for a company that is of 10 people, but the person who's leading that organization wanted to have a very positive culture even with those 10 people, because he recognized that each person as an individual, is going to help me deliver this business. So I want a performance management for 10 people and I want to build a positive environment. And all of these ideas this person had, but wasn't, they did a lot of DIY performance and it took them up to a certain level, and then they realized they need help and they engaged with us. So we developed this manual and we put a welcome note on this manual. And when this person read that welcome note, it's like, were you in my mind that you literally, one of our team wrote such a beautiful welcome note. He's like, I could not have said this better myself, so thank you, because this is exactly what I wanted to convey. So we are able to draw out what that person wants to convey to their team and make it meaningful to them, because they're the ones who are the end users of that performance and the benefactors of it, right? You're also a benefactor because their performance leads to your growth.
100%.
But they will be good in their performance if they also buy into it and they believe in it, right? Because they are going to be the ones that have to take ownership of performance. So that person was like so pleased with seeing that welcome. It's like, were you in my head? Because that's what we do. We take those pieces, our experience, our team's experiences, how to draw out that from a business owner and how to convey that to their employees.
I
But
think
in this,
become
I
that-
wanted to understand one more there, Rona, that you know that emotions are not mentioned on the CV. I mean, but EQ is very important. I
Sure.
mean, I mentioned everything about IQ. I have great skills. I have this
Yeah.
I have this academic knowledge. I have passed on from particular university, and you will endorse my skills from an IQ level. But what happens of EQ today? But that was not taught in school.
yeah. And
That
that's
was never taught in school. And my really role is people's management.
Yeah.
I'm managing people's minds every day.
Yeah.
and that's why we have an
And
interview.
that's where the actually, I mean, confusion comes.
Yeah.
I mean, should I take him for his skills, or I should take him for his skills and his style of working?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question, right? And I think this is why having an interview process that is not just a chat, but a well thought out, structured interview is very important because you should know what questions you're asking, but also more importantly, you should know what answers you're looking for. Like, what does good look like? So, yes, EQ is important, but you have to have the skill to be able to identify that or assess that to a certain degree through that interview and screening process. We do a lot of the work for you when we do that initial screening. But then, this is why we form that bridge almost to be able to say, like, look, Elona is a great HR candidate. I think you should see her.
Yeah.
I had actually read one book by I think Joy Coleman or someone, that Never Lose That Employee Again. And he had this unique way of recruiting, it seems. And he had given an example where an employer was recruiting, I think, on a vessel. They were recruiting a lot of sailormen and all. And then his basic question was that, do you know to sing? He said, what? I mean, it's not relevant to my job.
Yeah.
He says, no, because there will be situations where we'll be panicking.
Yeah.
And you'll have to sing that time. And they all, and apparently when the ship sunk or something, and they landed on some iceberg, and till the next help comes, I mean, they all survived because they could sing.
Yeah.
No.
So that's the story of the marine industry,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Because
yeah.
sailors and fishermen,
Yeah.
to kill time while
Yeah.
they're fishing, they sing. There's a lot of fishermen folk
Now,
songs,
academically,
right?
that's nowhere there on the CV.
But like, this is where also creativity comes into play,
Yeah.
right? And this person knew what he was looking for. So he didn't just call him to look at a CV and say, asked him a bunch of questions. He thought about how would this person fit into my business. So you can only think about the preparation that's gone into it. And this is why this is important.
Or is it that he was looking for someone who has a calm attitude even when the situation is
But how
panicking?
do you assess that? How do you say, do you have a calm attitude? Of course, everyone will say, yes, I have a very calm attitude,
That's the point.
But the question is, can you do this? And let me give you another example of how we use that, right? So when we hired our first team member, we were like, we're going to get hundreds of applications. In fact, we hired our first team member in COVID. So of course, lots of people were looking for work. So what did we do? We asked people to send in like a maximum 1-minute clip of themselves talking about introducing themselves and telling us about their unique HR perspective. Why did we do that? Because we wanted members of our team to be able to think outside the box, be unafraid to try something different, be creative, because that's what we wanted to offer to our clients. So by asking people to do this, it just automatically weeded out a lot of people who were not willing to do that.
So there are tests sometimes, I think specific industries also. I think aviation
Yeah.
industry, they do these stress tests as well before employing.
Because that is needed in that industry, right? So like, we always say you're interviewing and not interrogating, because
Yeah.
a lot of times what happens is people think that, let's put the candidate under pressure to see if they are the best version of them. In you don't need stress, and you should avoid stress in an interview, because you will get the best out of a candidate if the candidate feels comfortable. So creating that right comfortable environment right from the time of them entering your office to come for that face-to-face interview or a virtual interview is to make that candidate at ease, so that they can recall all their experience and give you the information you're asking. And it's more important to structure your interview so you get the maximum out of that candidate as well, instead of asking questions that will give a yes or no answer. like, have you worked in XYZ? The person will say yes, but where do you go from there? Like, what is the experience? Because although you might be from the same industry, every company's culture, environment, procedures, experience is very different.
100%.
So
I think also, like, you can use this podcast as an analogy.
Okay.
Now, if you were hosting us and you were interrogating us, then for sure we'd be so uncomfortable and not be able to share, relevant experiences. But because you made us feel comfortable, we're now able to share information that is actually beneficial to your audience,
Yeah,
right?
100%. And that's the most, that's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because till you go,
In
don't give my
every-
genuine experience tips. I mean, I could think from any assumption, but you come as a subject matter expert.
Exactly.
Who've met maybe thousands of candidates who've actually been interviewed, and you've built ecosystems around workplace to sustain them.
Yeah.
And that's where it actually drives me that, that
Yeah, I think I'd like to think of us as a bit of like architects, right?
Yeah.
Like businesses come to us and they're like, look, we want to build a team that looks like this. And so we help them to articulate that vision and put it on paper. Much like when you go to an architect and you're like, I want to build a house, I want it to have 3 rooms, I want it to have a pool. In your mind, you kind of know what you want it to feel like, what you want, how you want to feel when you walk into that house. The architect then takes your ideas and puts it on paper, and then you're like, yes, this is what I want. And then you okay it, and that's how both of you achieve an outcome. And so wear that for these small business owners, not just in terms of recruiting people, but making sure that their business is set up for success in the long term from a people perspective. Right people, right framework, right systems, right practices, great cultures.
Yeah. And we keep talking about small businesses because the affordability of getting things wrong or having to learn by doing and making a mistake or failing at something, the cost is much greater. And the consequences of it is you could have to shut down because you've done something that dramatic. So getting these things in line and investing in this is protecting your business and take off, not just to protect, but also to get that runway to take off. And that is not something that is, something that you should take for granted or take lightly, and small businesses, every person that they add to their team is a core member of their team. It is not, you're scaling and you have hundreds of people that you're hiring. So every member brings that different skill sets and different experience that will help deliver your vision.
And that's where the communication matters.
Exactly.
Like in our example, fine, I've got the guidance from you. I built a great CV. I've applied for a job. You've recruited me. Now I've gone for job and it's my first day. I mean, do induction matters?
Of course, absolutely. Induction is so important. Again, I like
And not all entrepreneurs have HR team.
It's fine.
What should I cover in an induction?
It's absolutely fine if you don't have an HR team. Like these things, right? What we do is we help you create these things one time, and then we'll even teach you how to manage this on your own until such time that you have a big enough population that maybe you need full-time HR. There are a number of things. In fact, I think, if I can plug in our website, we have a free template download. You can go and there's an onboarding checklist. You're welcome to download it. And it tells you what needs to happen in those first 2 weeks. But it's really important to create that welcoming experience for new employees because, again, if I go back to my hotel example, right? Imagine if you go to this hotel and you go to reception and you're like, hey, I'm here for my holiday. It's day 1. And the receptionist is like, oh, yeah, we were expecting you. Welcome. And then they're like, hang on, let me check if your room is ready.
Yeah.
And then they take you to your room and they're cleaning it as you're there, and then they're like, oh, where are you going to eat? Okay, hang on, let me check with the chef So if they're doing all of this, I can guarantee that you're not going to have a good experience.
The first impression itself will be adverse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you are going to spend at least 8 hours of your day for the foreseeable future in this place. Like, are you going to look forward to that experience? I highly doubt it, right? So make the effort. It's like welcoming someone into your house.
And there's statistics to back that why induction matters. Like the highest amount of turnover.
So what should I explain in that induction? Like me as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
I mean, we've hired like so many people, and maybe we have like 50, 30 people working with us. We don't have a full-time HR, and these guys were just hired as and when they were required.
Yeah.
So you can understand a startup culture. So what should I explain? I've never explained them anything.
Yeah.
I just put up the job description and I said, Azan, you're the marketing manager.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that how do we get 100 leads a day?
Yeah.
Now he needs to figure out what he has to do, and he comes to me, okay, boss, how do I get it?
Yeah.
Then I say, fine. We take about 5,000 as a target, and we say this is the budget that I'm allocating to you, and you target a product and just make sure whatever hook and catch approach
Yeah.
you follow, maybe to getting a great, a nice graphical, product or maybe go by a lead generation campaign or do whatever you want, but
Yeah.
get the result.
Yeah.
I did not take him under a formal induction.
And look,
I think he's here.
he's here. And look, I think, he's here. You've created a profitable business, and that's great, right? But like, here's an interesting statistic that you were about to share
Yeah.
on
So in people leave in the first 90 days, the turnover in the first 90 days is higher if you don't have a good onboarding experience.
Oh.
And and even if they stay, their learning curve is longer, their performance levels are lower, and they will stay because they don't have other options, not because they're happy to be here. So you will see that in their work delivery. They'll deliver the work, but not at necessarily not meet expect, just do the work for keeping, staying employed. And that's not the kind of employees
I
you
think
want.
I can correlate that with the learning curve.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the learning curve was long.
Because they're busy trying to figure out how do I work in this business?
Yeah.
Like, where
There
do
was
I
no
go?
structured.
Because if someone says, hey, for lunch, you go down here, fine. As opposed to someone thinking, okay,
What time
I
is
think,
lunch?
what time
Where
is
do I
lunch?
go?
Where do I go? Where do I get this? They're busy trying to work that out because somebody hasn't worked it out for them. And what you need them to do is come and focus on generating 100 leads. I have everything else taken care of. Let's start working on the campaign, right?
You can start your productivity of an employee is directly proportional to how you onboard this person. The more, if you invest the first 5 days, the 7 days into like an orientation week, and give information about how that person's employment is managed, then you focus the next week on how they are going to deliver the role. And then by the third week, you'll start to see productivity. But if you don't do it in this structured way, oftentimes what happens is you're still answering questions in the 4th week and the 5th week and the 2nd month and the 3rd month, which by that time, your connection with that employee is like, dude, this is basic. You should know this. This is why you were hired. It's like, yeah, I know it, but you didn't set the right expectations up front, and I don't know how it applies in your
That's
company,
where
et
the
cetera, et
communication
cetera.
of vision matters.
This is where
Because if I and you can say, okay, Desma, let's go on Dubai airport. Now you would choose one way, maybe from Al Khail Road. I will choose a Sheikh Zayed Road. We may
Absolutely.
reach at the end, but you will take maybe half an hour extra. I may go half an hour. I
Exactly.
did not communicate how we should move.
what
And
you should
no
communicate
tolls in one
Yeah.
way. Then
what
the
you
other.
should communicate is, look, every day we have to go to Dubai airport, and we will go this
By
road.
the Sheikh Zayed
and
road,
this is
and this is
called
the shortest road.
And this is called building a policy. You build a policy on every week we will work for 5 days from this time to this time. This is lunch break. This is how you apply for your leave. This is how so you give them an operational manual of how to be an employee, and then you give the managers a manual on how to manage the team. You've taken care of 2 things. Now you can focus on growing the business. That's where we help. We help you create that foundation, that structure. You do it once, and then every time a new employee joins, whether it's employee 15 or 50 or 500, they're just referring to the same thing. So you've taken care of set that expectation and that structure from the
So
beginning.
how do you guide when it comes to, Dubai is a very labor-driven market, or maybe you could say from a legislation standpoint, it is very work cultured when it comes to the laws. I want to understand, how do you guide on labor laws?
Yeah.
And is it a part of your your training or
Yeah.
the consulting
Yeah. In fact,
that
actually,
you get the manual in line with the labor laws?
exactly. This is actually a very key function of, a key offering that we do. We create those HR foundations. So we create your employment templates. We create all of the policies and procedures. We create an employee handbook, and we create every form of letters, forms, all of that. And we do that within a 6-week period. How we do this is we do consultation sessions with you, not just to give you advice from a labor law perspective, but also to understand your business operation. Because how Plan My Firm operates will be different than how the studio operates,
Yeah.
right? So we'll understand that, tell you what your obligations are as an employer, and then we'll tell you how you can apply that within your organization. We do that, we create the documents for you, and then we do a very, very comprehensive management briefing session where we tell you how to operationalize this from an employee life cycle perspective. So what happens, what should happen before an employee joins, what happens during the onboarding period, what happens when someone's in employment, what happens when they leave. Because there's things that employers don't really think about. And I'll give you a simple example. Like when someone comes, you give them a laptop.
Yeah.
How are you tracking it? Where is it documented?
Yeah.
When somebody leaves, how are you making sure that you have
handover
received
happens.
exactly? So you don't have time to sit and think about all of that, but we've done the work for you.
Because we know these are where you will be. We have preempted this because of our experience, and this is how we structure every business. So now just you and the employee work together and find ways to just prosper. The other thing, going back to your I don't know what to have in induction, or I don't know what to have in orientation, we've also have a solution for that. Is we've created digital products where these sort of orientation decks are pre-defined based on UAE labor law and based on general over here, and you're able to edit it and apply, and we've got instructions given in there and pointers. So it's like adding a little bit of your flavor. So like, let's take
And
that.
I'm sure that these HR manuals and these induction programs are all in line with the similar industries, right? They're
Yeah.
in line with the industries. I mean,
They are. So sometimes it is, like take.
it can't be just fit for all, or it's not a general
No.
manual.
No,
It's
no.
always
Everything-
industry specific.
There's lots of nuances to it. This is why we don't have a template. We have a way of personalizing through consultation and guidance. So it's not just about compliance. It's about aligning it to your industry, aligning it to your business, aligning to any regulations. Like take healthcare, for instance. You cannot just comply with labor law. You have health authority to
DHA.
comply
Exactly.
with.
DHA in
So-
Abu Dhabi, it's had.
Yeah.
There's Dubai Healthcare City.
Yeah.
So we've worked with over 41 industries. So the
Wow.
beauty of that is also we're able to get best practices from different industries and come up with ways to say, like, actually, here's how you can address this.
Yeah, and we have 3 different labor laws as well in the UAE. You have the DIFC,
Yeah.
employment, you have ADGM, and you have the UAE federal law.
Correct.
And you have to know how to. If you're in DIFC, the UAE labor law and what is published might be different to what applies
Very
to
different
you.
from a mainland.
Every different from a mainland, and so we are familiar with all of those jurisdictions. We understand free zone regulations that have not a change to the labor law sometimes, but their own way of doing it, like how Rakesh does
So the
it.
policy
is
also
different.
covers grievances, yeah?
Everything, yeah.
We have
in
a-
the labor disputes.
Everything.
So I mean, because
And-
most of the easiest way, if this is not communicated well enough,
They'll go to labor.
they just go to labor and they
Correct.
file a complaint and they just create this harassment for
And-
themselves as well as the employer.
But I'll tell you why they go to labor. Because you haven't given them an avenue to address that internally.
Yeah.
If you had a grievance policy, employees would know that, look, in the event that there's a grievance, here's what to do. In the absence of that, they'll go to labor. So you reduce that risk and give them the opportunity to address something to you so you can resolve it within the organization before it even escalates to labor.
To explain the gap, right? There was one instance where one of my friends was made redundant, right? So that person received a letter, and that person works for a big organization. And in the letter, the person was terminated, but they said, if you can raise an appeal against this termination to HR and so on and so forth. And we were talking about this amongst friends, and there was another friend that worked in a smaller business. And they're like, but you're terminated. How can you appeal? It's like, and I'm sitting there as an HR person. was like, I'm sorry, you didn't know that you could appeal a termination? I was
Wow.
like, no, I just thought that's it, that, I move on. And that's the gap. So there are ways to, you don't have to go outside of the company if you set up the right framework within the company to address grievances. Now, that person's termination may not have been overturned, but that person would feel like they had an opportunity to voice their concerns and be heard.
And not just that, right? This person can also be like you're talking about your brand, and somebody else could be a client or a customer of your brand.
Absolutely.
So like now people are very conscious of where they spend their money. If they feel like this guy is not a great employer, I have options. I don't want
100%.
to. I don't want to give him my money. I don't want to give her my money.
Yeah.
So how you treat people, how you manage this,
Yeah.
is not just restricted to
It
one
becomes a
thing.
matter of ego as well.
It becomes
At times, at least the C level, I
Yeah.
mean, if they feel that, there is no, compassionate communication, then it happens as a ego that no,
Yeah.
I'm making sure that, these policies are going to be exposed.
and that's the other beauty of having these things, right? There's no ego at play. It's very black and white.
Yeah.
This is the policy there. So nobody, it's not like I feel like being generous with that person, this is why I'm going to do this. No, the policy says so. I don't. So it saves you from that decision making process of someone coming to you and saying, hey, I have this really terrible situation. Now in that event you can make a decision by exception, but the policy is there to sort of give you headspace back, so that every time someone comes and asks you, you don't have to think of like, what should I do in this case? What does the labor law require me to do?
What did I say last time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what did I do when somebody else asked me the same thing? You're just like, look at the policy.
Is it uniform or no?
Is it uniform or no? Exactly.
No, one more thing I wanted to ask you. I mean, considering that today there are various forms of employment, like, there are people could work from home, people are working remotely, people could work part time, they are full time, they could be hybrid systems. Yeah, I mean, how one records the absenteeism, or when someone will say that, fine, he's working. I mean, or how does this fit into a culture? Because if you just leave it loose, people will take it for granted. And they'll say, sir, it's fine when I'm working from home. I mean, so how does one manage this?
Yeah.
At least from a small employment point of view.
I think we probably need to have a second podcast episode
I
that
was
talks
just
about
about to say that.
management of people in different scenarios, right?
Yeah.
So it's not
just
that.
a little summary. I just
Yeah,
wanted.
yeah. So look, again, it's back to having a clear policy in place on how you record these things. And in the absence of having that, you leave it to interpretation from either side. A manager can think that an employee may just be saying, oh yeah, I'm working from home, but actually he's not. Or an employee can think like, what's wrong with this manager? Like, I'm working. Why is he asking me? Like, he should trust me. But when you document these things and both parties are clear on, this is how we, how we promote or support a productive work environment. Absences are not to be looked down on. If it's for your health, if it's for your mental health, your physical health, please take time off. Tell me, and we'll figure a way around it. And then the employees, also everybody wants to do good work. Nobody comes into work thinking like, oh, how am I going to not do enough work? If you are able to align them with their values, your goals, they're clear on what they have to deliver. If all of this is aligned, then you just create that culture where people look to be productive.
Lastly, Elona, your this one question I wanted to. You want to say something?
Yeah, so what I was going to say is, so one day absences that you're talking about is one of the biggest costs to a company.
Yeah, it's a cost
And
to the company.
when you look at the root cause, it's because the environment and the culture does not allow that employee to feel excited about coming to work every day. So the one day absences is a symptom of a bigger issue.
So it's a
Rather
symptom of
than-
a boredom. Like someone is getting bored.
No, it's
No.
not necessarily bored. It's a symptom. The issue you need to
Address it.
Yeah.
question, first of all, what is the issue, and then address it.
Yeah. And what I suggest is, instead of having the challenge of like, oh, this person is having some sort of an impression or a viewpoint of why this person are making those conclusions, is have a conversation.
Yeah.
Just speak to the employee saying, look, I generally prefer my team to be this, and but I've seen you've been doing this. What is the reason? I would like to know, and then work around it. That's having that conversation rather than having an opinion in mind is a better way to
Yeah.
diffuse that situation, and you will see very quickly the behavior change.
Yeah, like having that continuous feedback immediately. If you're feeling something, just say, look, I'm suspecting this. Is everything okay? And then give that person to say, no, actually, everything's fine. And, address continuous feedback is also part of a very positive, productive culture.
Lastly, your tagline.
Guys, I'm so sorry.
Only last question.
Possible. I have someone waiting.
It's just last question. I'm just ending it.
30
I have to say
minutes.
thank you, right?
You're late 30 minutes.
No, thank you. I'll just say thank you. So lastly, I wanted the last question, that the tagline of your website. I mean, we build people and people build companies.
Yeah.
Can you give me some analogy behind it?
So that is somebody that we believe, that's why we say people are the biggest asset of your organization. So if you build your people to help them deliver your vision, they will build your company, and you can, watch that happen and, enjoy in the bliss of your vision becoming a reality.
Because people are the greatest asset of
Yeah, I
any
mean, of course,
organization.
and that's where the capacity building and all happens.
There's a lot. Like, I think we can
I
have a
think
second.
we will have a second. And
podcast.
thank you so much, Desma and Elona. Really,
Thank you
thank
very
you for
much for
coming.
having
We will 100% catch up next time in our studios.
Yeah, absolutely.
so-
I look forward to the
Yeah.
second
Yes.
session.
Thank you so much.
Thank
yeah?
you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye.